a statement below noting that, and the parent, school personnel are to sign and date that document. Our next change in our plan, in previous years, we would send the parents home with a brochure, so it would be a separate document. But instead of having two separate documents, we combine them into one. So on the front page, you will have the student safety checklist, and then copied on the back will be a list of resources that parents can access for their student. And it gives a one-page out so that the parents won't have to fumble through pages and pages of documentation. So once a student returns, we have a reentry meeting as well, which is on page 10 of the intervention plan. And on the student reentry, the participants will be the student, the parent, school counselors, and an administrator. And what this is really, the purpose of the reentry meeting is to really gather that information about the intervention or treatment that the student received, and also any information about any treatment recommendations, so that we can have this on file, but also to really make that assessment as a school team, the students' preparedness to come back to school. And this will also be another one-page document with the reentry meeting on one page. And then on the back page of the reentry meeting will be a student mental health safety plan, which will be completed during that reentry meeting. And this is where the student is the director of the plan. So asking students the question, what information would you like to share with your school team? And having them state what will work best for them. And a copy of the reentry meeting and also the copy of the mental health safety plan will be provided to the parents, and also will be in the students' file with their school counselor as well. So those were the major changes of the plan. We do have our safety intervention protocol checklist, which is still the same as the previous plan that was presented 2 years ago, which will help identify all the steps that were taken in assessing the student, ensuring that the plan has been implemented and followed to fruition. And that's also part of the postvention, the suicide postvention piece as well. Are there any questions?
You mentioned, and I probably should know this, SIT meeting in the high school and MTSS meeting. Are those the counselors that meet?
So the SIT meeting at the high school is the student intervention team. So it's comprised of myself, Mrs. Zeller, and Mrs. Filmino, the assistant principals. We also have our special education department chair, Ms. Jennifer Campbell, our school counseling department chair, our school psychologist, a nurse, and also our school social worker. That comprises our team. And then school counselors or teachers or case managers are part of the SIT team as they bring referrals to the SIT team. And MTSS also has administrators and school counselors and other support staff as well.
And you get those referrals from just the counseling department, or also from teachers and staff?
From teachers and staff. And at the high school, we have a Google form that is sent out to our staff through Tim's weekly messages, emails. I apologize for that. Emails, so that it's current and in front of everyone, so that they know that this is an option of support for students.
Very concise, very well done. It's nice to know that that's happening. I didn't realize that.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks. Can we turn on the lights?
I got it.
Thank you. Thank you, that was great. I have a couple of questions, but I'll let other people go. Any questions?
Yeah, I just had one question just for clarification purposes. Just when a student needs to be cleared to return, it says by a licensed mental health practitioner. I was just curious because that's kind of a broad term, and unfortunately there's crazy shortages in getting kids in. So does that mean a psychiatrist or a mental health counselor or a social worker? It's
Yes.
kind of a pretty broad.
Pretty broad.
Okay, just checking because.
Primary care would qualify as well.
Well, that's what I was
Primary
curious,
care.
because primary care, and sometimes us primary care people will defer to mental health, but it doesn't say that, so I was curious, because in some cases, a primary care would be inappropriate because they have a good rapport, and sometimes it's not, because
Right.
someone else has a better rapport, or it's kind of higher level, but the way it was written, just saying just licensed health, so I'm not sure, I was just curious if who it includes and if it would include a primary.
It does include a primary.
Perfect.
Any other questions? So what is Morgan's message?
Morgan's Message is a group, a student proposed club. It is a nationwide group. It is in honor of a student athlete who took her own life. And one of the stigmas around student athletes and mental health, is to maybe tough it out. And Morgan's message is, it's okay not to be okay, and but through the lens of an athlete, a student athlete, and the student who had brought that forward was very passionate about it, and we do have a staff advisor
I saw that,
working
yeah.
with the student, and I believe they've struggled to get off the ground. They've
It's
had
new,
a couple,
right?
yeah, it's
Okay.
new. They had a couple initiatives last year at games. They had some tables and some flyers and information and such. But they have had, I know recently they just had a meeting at school within the last month. Morgan's Message did meet, so.
And then Culture Club?
Culture Club, similarly, we had.
It's not like Wham.
It's not like Wham. It is not Wham. Oh, I know what you're saying.
We're 80s girls.
Yeah. So, Culture Club was another student proposed club. The students came forward, basically looking to learn more about various cultures throughout the world. We have a teacher in the social studies department who again offered to advise the club. The kids wanted to learn more about different cultures that exist around the world.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Those are my questions. I have the same two.
The changes, those.
Yeah, it was good to lay out the changes because I do remember seeing this a couple of years ago. And we have to review this every 2 years, correct? But we do not need to vote on it. This is your plan, done by your team. And it's done at the high school, but covers the middle school as well.
Yep.
But the middle school participates in the planning as well,
Yes,
right?
that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's just important that we see it. Okay, so thank you. Thank you for sharing it with us. Great. Terrific, thank you. And I believe that is all we need from you. Okay. So you're welcome to stay as we cover so many other very interesting topics. However, you're also welcome to go home. So, unless Tim has required you to be here. This is between you and your principal. Okay, moving on. FY25 budget.
Yes, in your board packet, you have both the new items, first 3 rounds, as well as the Excel spreadsheet, which encompasses the whole budget. This will be going back to the Budget Committee, but I'm very happy to report we are presently at guidance. We've met what they requested,
Good job.
which is a 4.8% increase to the operating budget, and it really does a number of things, and I'd just like to highlight a couple of those that were on our agenda. One is cool-down zones at the middle school. Those are spaces designed for our special ed students so that they have an opportunity to kind of pause their day and reflect with guidance and supervision. And it's something that we have seen success without formal cool-down zones, and we really believe those will enhance it, and I thank our staff for bringing that forward. The board had talked last year about the cost of the DC trip and wanting to kind of keep that relatively stable. So we have bus transportation in there for that. We also have the funding to continue the sea perch kits and expenses, which is when the Kittery Naval Shipyard comes over every year and works, and our kids then go back there. It's been a really wonderful program, goes along with our push for STEM and our robotics and all of those pieces. The Performing Arts had requested a storage shed because they just continue to grow. As you heard about their recent performance, it was wonderful, and providing them this shed right outside their area will allow us to clean up some of the, what I'll call the stage area, which will make it a much safer environment for everybody involved. We have some textbooks. AP Calculus will be getting new textbooks, geometry, and our new course, business and professional writing. We're excited for that. The under stipends, the big one I wanted to point out was just the $9,600 for the after-school academic support. We started that using COVID funds. We've had great success in providing support for a number of our students. So Patrick had asked that to continue, and I think the numbers justify that. At the high school, we have a back security entrance monitor position in there. We do intend to move forward. Right now, we know that we are on the list for approval for funding from the state grant for safety, which will pay about 50% of the cost for the back entrance to be redone. So we're very excited about that. Yeah.
Wow,
Yep.
that's like big news.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yep, all six of our schools are on the list for safety items. So again, I want to thank Kelly and all her staff for getting those in. As we talked a little bit about, we are reducing the computer teacher position. We still will be able to offer those courses as enrollment's gone down. We've farmed out some of the finance classes and those pieces, so we're very comfortable. If somebody came in or we got a recommendation for somebody that would just knock our socks off and build that program to something we would want, I'd probably come to the board and ask them to look at the contingency fund for something of that nature. But I think now it's prudent on our part, especially with the way the economic times are. We have a request in special ed for paras. Those are child-specific, so those are both appear in the budget, 2 at the high school and I believe 2 at the, 190 days for specific students. And you see the 190 days because those students are also in our extended year program, so they have extra hours.
Those are two pairs, okay.
That's good. And then the big expense under computers, as we talked about, and Carol made her presentation, there are 101 Chromebooks at the high school for $38,380. Excuse me, that was the middle school. Yep. At the high school, we have 2 expenses. Our engineering laptops are end of life, so those are in the budget, as well as our Chromebooks for students, 201 Chromebooks at $380 a piece. So those were 2 significant items. The majority of our athletic requests are being funded through the activities fee that athletes pay. So even though those are zero, many of those items will be taken care of through that. We are updating and increasing some cameras at the middle school. And we are looking at the sidewalk from the weight room to the stop sign. Design and construction will hopefully take place this spring and summer. A little later on tonight, I'm going to talk about our facilities recommendation, but you'll see at both the middle school and the I'm going to approach it a little differently, and I'll explain that shortly. But really, that $350,000 that's in the budget is about 1.4%. So, I mean, the overall increase is about 3.4%. That expense that we can't avoid anymore because the piping has come to the end of its useful life, which we'll discuss with the facilities. There are a number of different things. We are increasing our special ed van transportation. That has served us very, very well and reduced cost from our normal bus runs. And we are replacing our scissor lift. That's the lift that gets us up to the gym lights and any thing overhead. This time we are purchasing a trailer, and there'll be times when we'll be able to take that scissor lift to our other buildings and recoup some cost through what I'll call rental, which will be much cheaper than when we have to go out and rent a scissor lift. I do want to thank the Budget Committee, the administration, the business office, everybody who's been involved in this. It's been a very good process. Like I said, we're not through round 4. We still have some discussion items to go, but we have reached guidance. We also have in there the assessment for the SAU, the allotments to the maintenance trust, the contingency fund would stay, and the special ed trust. If everything passed, it'd be a 1.496522, $1,496,522 increase, which would be 5.3%. But this really does meet the overwhelming majority of our requests for our students. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
May I ask where we are in the special ed trust? What our balance is right now?
I believe we're at 250, 250,000.
Is that where we wanted, or did we want to?
That was the original piece when we started, and we're having discussions with BudCom, because as we all know, special ed costs have gone up again.
Okay, so that we want to keep putting 20.
We're looking at that.
Okay.
It may or may not, depending on where we end up with the overall budget number. But at the same time, it's in there now, because a special ed cost for one student out of district with transportation, if you were looking at a residential placement, could be somewhere now between $400,000 and $600,000.
Okay.
So we've closed the gap, and when I look at that 250 and the contingency and different things, I feel very comfortable about that. But at the same time, as we create the framework for the next decade, it may be prudent on our part to increase that.
Okay.
Will students who participate in esports pay athletic fees?
That's one of the topics that Brian has been looking at right now through the grant. We were just going to move forward and see what the experience is.
Okay.
And then, kind of similar to almost any of our sports, he would put out in the Google survey, get some feedback, and Tim and I will try to remind him to put that question in.
Just a question.
you know,
I
what-
don't have an opinion, I'm just asking the question.
Well, I think when I look at esports, again, the majority of our athletic fees go to offset, like, things like transportation,
Right.
those type of things.
Referees, like,
So there
right.
would be transportation for esports, not so much referees.
No.
So we may want to look at some fee, even if it's not exactly identical to other sports.
Right, because the expenses are going to be very different.
Right.
But then you get into the whole, you can't really start charging for sports based on expenses, because then
Correct.
you'd have to start
Correct.
doing that differently.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. And we
You don't
don't
wanna start
typically.
doing that.
No, we typically just look at really the transportation as
Right.
the biggest driver.
right. Okay. Just a question. Any other questions on this? So we met guidance, was the guidance 4.8, was that, or was like?
The guidance was the dollar amount, which turns out to be 4.8.
Okay,
And again, there are still ongoing discussions, because again, we're not through round 4, and sometimes when we look at the whole thing, we have made changes in the past.
yeah. Great. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for all your hard work, all of you who work on this and crunch these numbers, and crunch these numbers and crunch them again, because I think it's mind-blowing that you crunch all these numbers all the time. Okay, moving on. We're just flying through. Revenue and expense report, FY '25. I think that would be you, Linda?
It would. It's hard to top. Before, because
Right.
if you really recall, in October, I was going to present a report, and then an hour before the presentation, I discovered some encumbrance problems behind the scenes with payroll.
Right.
So we didn't present those numbers, but to err on the side of caution, we did put us into a freeze in October.
Right.
And what the freeze means, again, is not that we couldn't spend what we had purchase orders for, but no new purchase orders.
But freezing sounds
So now we're
scary.
looking a lot better. So we, on this report,
Are we looking at
we-
expenses first?
we're looking at expenses first. We have a few so overall, with expenses, we're showing right now out of our $28.6 million budget, that we're showing a savings of $627,000. The three big areas there where we're saving money is one, special ed, where we've got savings. We had savings in ESY, which is summer school vacancies, and just hiring savings. And then in the school board SAU assessment line, that is really where the $125,000 contingency money lies, and we are not encumbering that, so that's why there's a balance there. And then in benefits, we have savings, again, due to the savings in salaries, and also we had mentioned a couple months ago, there was a shift in our insurance plans, people going from single to two-person plan. So because of the way the expenses look now, we've decided to take us out of the freeze. So we are now in a thaw. So
It's getting warmer in the
we're getting
SAU
warmer.
office.
So I don't know
As it gets
if,
colder, it
and-
gets warmer.
right,
Got
and
it.
I don't know if Kelly had told the schools this yet. So effective tomorrow, I'll send a note out to the team in your buildings to let them know we can now create purchase orders again because we feel comfortable enough with the numbers. So there's that. On the revenue side, it's pretty close to what we've budgeted. We're over by $9,600. In food service, we're seeing a little bit of a surplus from our annual state matching funds from the state of New Hampshire. And then in vocational ed, we get reimbursement for transportation costs. So we have a little bit of a surplus there. So because of the way the numbers worked out, at this point, we would be able to fund the maintenance trust at $300,000, the special ed trust at $25,000, and then the retained fund balance, what we had shown there previously was up to $398,000. So what we're plugging in there now is just the $312,000 so that we get us to a $0 fund balance. This would not be funding the contingency fund. So this is a projection of where we are right now. The numbers look a lot better than they did a couple months ago, but we'll see what happens once we see what the schools need to do with the balance. So in other words, on the expense side, that $600,000 that we're showing as the balance, that now, if schools need to use that money, they can. And so we'll have to see how that goes, and I'll present again probably in January or February, and we'll see where we end up. Any questions
That's good
on these numbers?
Great. That's good news, Linda. Good
That's
job.
good news.
It's good news.
Good news. Thank you for crunching those numbers.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Great. I like good news. Good news is good. All right, so we're moving on from that. Thank you very much for that. We're not going to talk about the licensing agreement, so we now need to talk about another just thrilling topic, which is, I believe it's the Co-op Facilities Committee report out, which is called the Hollis Brookline Fuel Conversion Project, which is a conversation about boilers and piping.
In your board packet,
Thrilling.
there is information regarding our committee work regarding the boilers. And I'd like to just start by saying thank you to the committee. It's a group of citizens from both Hollis and Brookline, as well as board members and budget committee members, who came together to look at this issue and decide what's the best way to move forward. What we are aware of is that we have boilers in the middle school that are 27 years old and boilers in the high school that are 37 years old. And as a result, our piping will no longer be able to pass the new requirements that are coming out. So we technically fall into what is called non-compliant. To address that, we had a gentleman come out as a consultant and advise us on the steps that we needed to take. It was determined through the Facilities Committee that the high school is in the greatest need to begin with, from the standpoint of the piping situation, okay? The boilers are newer, they're better, but the piping is a concern. So in our budget, which we just talked about, we had set aside $350,000 to address that. The committee is recommending that we move forward with addressing the high school, which will be $347,000, so that we'll be just simply able to pay that. That will get us a conversion to propane boilers at the high school. That will get us a new a small little oil tank to run our generator on those days that we need that, as well as change over our piping and set us up for decades. Because in the long term, the Facilities Committee is looking at these boilers at the high school is going to be a secondary supplier. So there is no, I would say, great need to put in brand-new boilers at this time for there. The middle school, what we're proposing for FY '26 is that we do a replacement to the middle school boiler. There is no what is called redundancy right now in that boiler system because of its age, and that creates some problems within itself. That boiler would be a new propane boiler. At both buildings, we would have new propane tanks. We would remove the old oil tanks and dispose of those properly. That cost is $675,500 for FY '26. The piece that is happening also in FY '26 is that we have a bond reduction from the middle school. So there'll be $600,000 coming off our expenses based on the bond reduction. The other piece that the committee has suggested we look at, that we said we would, if we were to have a surplus at the end of this year, we would encumber money towards offsetting that FY '26 project and reduce that overall cost. So in some ways, this is similar to what we've done with our roofs, almost more of a pay-as-you-go. But this would set us up long-term for propane in both buildings, which gives us the buying power to buy with the Hollis School District and the town of Hollis, because it would all be on propane, and that increased buying power would probably allow us to see better rates per our usage. In terms of the committee, they had provided their recommendation in the packet, and at the same time, they're recommending that when we get to January, the board formally kind of appoint them again to move into the second phase, which would be, again, to do a more exhaustive research on the middle school boilers, as well as start to talk about long-term heat source air pumps, solar, those other pieces, because that's really the bigger game plan, whether we did solar on a roof, whether we did a solar field, if we went to air source heat pumps, are there sections in the building that would allow us to be very efficient with those? So pretty much everybody who's on the present committee would like to stay on and is enjoying the work, even though it's discussing boilers. And we look forward to kind of bringing back more.
Some people like that stuff.
Exactly, bringing back more information. But I am excited to say that we will be able to do the phase one, I will call it, which is the high school component, and pay for that. And then we will be able to move forward with more exhaustive study on the middle school, the propane boilers, as well as the long-term plans for other alternatives for heating and cooling.
So phase one is option 5.
Phase one is option
Option
5,
five.
yes.
But is it this last column?
It is,
Oil tank removal and co-op own, no, it's no oil, which one is it?
yes, it's the $206,150 for new
Right.
boiler upgrades, $13,900 for a new oil tank for the generator,
Okay,
$75,200 for the co-op to own the tanks.
and
because-
you're removing the oil tank,
And remove the oil tank for 52.
because you don't want it to leak.
Right,
Right.
so that's at $347,250.
It's that one, I'm sorry, you must have gone over all that, I kind of,
No, that's okay.
I don't know what happened to my brain.
And
There
that
we go.
dollar amount is in the current budget.
That's in the budget.
That's in the budget. And so, you don't need to vote on this tonight,
No, because we won't need a vote on it because it's going to be in the budget.
It's in the budget, so you don't need to vote on it.
Right, it's just more so that the board is well
So we
aware
know
of
what's
the
going
plan.
on. Okay, and then this next part, the potentially install new boilers for the middle school, this is where you're leaning, but this isn't a done decision yet.
That's correct. The committee would reform in February with a new charge, review that to see if we come back, because we would have from January really to this time next year to
decide.
finalize that recommendation, as well as start to explore if different sections of the building could be done through different means of heating sources.
And you'd also be able to see where we are financially after this year, if we can chunk something, if there's money left over, yeah. I
Correct.
gotcha.
Like last year, we, as a board, you voted to put aside the money for the middle school security entrance.
Right.
That'll actually be done over one of the vacations this year. So if there was a surplus, there'd be most likely be a recommendation for those funds to be encumbered for the specific purpose of the project.
Okay. Well, I just, and everyone on the committee is on the same page on this?
Yes.
Like, this is like a
This
unanimous?
is, everybody who was there
On.
for the last meeting, but everybody has been along for the ride and getting the emails and everything.
And you haven't had somebody from the Hollis Energy Committee on the committee, but you've had conversations with them?
Yes, and I would say the biggest concern from the Hollis Energy Committee, just from my vantage point, is making sure that we are moving towards more of a long-term solution, but knowing that even whatever long-term solution we select is still going to need a backup heat system.
Okay. Okay. So they're aware of everything that's going on?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure,
Yep.
because last year was a little
Yep.
sticky. Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. Are there any questions? Sorry, I didn't mean to move on. So are there any questions on boilers or LP burners? Piping, oil? No? No? Ladies, come on! This is your favorite topic. We all love to talk about boilers.
Yeah, I did this in my own home a few
Yes,
years ago,
yes.
so it was super fun.
We could talk about kitchens. Does anybody want to ask about the kitchen? No? Okay, okay, sorry. Okay. Moving on, report out from the Budget Committee representative. Oh, he's not here. So is there anything that we need to hear from the Budget Committee?
No, they have their meeting next week.
Okay.
We'll go over what I presented to you tonight, and that will get us to round 4. It may come with changes, it may come exactly as is.
Okay, great, terrific.
You can close public input.
I can. Drew was going to pop in at 7. He's not here yet, but we're going to move on to the primary, and I think he'll be happy, so I think we're good. All right, so we'll move on to deliberations. We're a little bit ahead of time, but we'll let Drew speak, even though we're probably going to make a decision, so go ahead.
We are recommending as administration that January 23rd, the Tuesday of the presidential primary, be a no school for staff and students. We have already taken this vote in Hollis, and they have agreed. We have discussed it at length in Brookline, and I feel very confident they are also going to agree with this decision. We just feel for the volume that we expect to come out, that this is the right action to take. The reason why this wasn't simply on the school calendar is because the date wasn't known until about 3 weeks ago. So we don't have extra time to build in PD days and all that. Contractually, those have all been obligated, whereas next year we'll have those on the calendar, and the presidential election is a little more concrete. So we will try to do that. If the board approves it, we will be getting information out to the various schools. We are trying to keep the SAU on the same schedule. Just so the board knows, there wouldn't be any increase in transportation costs because of the arrangement we have with the bus company. But the problem for us lies in that if the high school was in and the elementaries were out, it presents a lot of daycare issues in that with students whose parents are looking for them to watch the younger ones. So we just feel this is the best piece for a presidential primary that we didn't know when it was happening until about 3 weeks ago.
Will there be a need to make up that day, or is it being pulled as a snow day, or do we have adequate hours to not have to make up that day?
There's a couple pieces that we have to wait and see the weather, because we do have 5 snow days built in.
Yep.
So we may not need to make it up. The second piece would be, we exceed the hours every year in terms of what's
Speaking of-
required.
Yeah, sorry, speaking of the weather.
Yeah. Is
it
It's very
snowing?
beautiful, yeah, big flakes out
Yeah,
there.
and then what we would do is we would come back typically in the spring, and what we do is we officially set a graduation date and a last day of school. So it's still tentative, but if we don't need to make it up, we wouldn't.
So we're going to treat it kind of as a snow day.
Correct.
Okay.
So is it safe to say that operationally, you guys like to treat the calendar as if we're all one district? Is it just a cleaner way to operate the 3 districts?
I would say yes, because then from a transportation standpoint, everybody's going out together. from a getting out time is in that. It's like we don't do an early release in one district and not others. It's just much easier for our staff and students, especially when it's also cost effective, like if it is a professional development day, we can offer a different type of speaker or different sessions because we have all three districts are contributing.
Okay.
Yep.
So Drew, we are on the topic of the primary. We're about to take a vote, but if you'd like to speak, you can.
Well,
Technically, public input could have closed about 20 minutes ago, but we've left it open specifically for you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Right now, everything's in your favor, so don't mess it up.
I mean, we have not had any negative comments, but you are welcome to speak. I'm going to ask that you state your name and address for the record.
Drew Mason, Baxter Road, Hollis,
Thank you.
and town moderator for Hollis and co-op moderator as well. Basically, we don't have anywhere else in town to have it, because given the number of voters and the excitement that surrounds it, and the number of voting booths we have to have, I guess our next best choice would be to try Hampshire Hills or something like that, but it's what it is. So, the other question, if you choose to let us have it, is what you want to do with school that day. Just as an aside for the new Brookliners, there is no requirement that an election has to be in your town. So it is, if you decide if your select board decides that you've outgrown your space, we could probably find a way to share the high school or the high school and the middle school, if that made sense. But anyway, if you have any questions, I'm here to.
So it's my understanding that the facility is determined by the superintendent according to policy. So we were just going to take a vote on whether or not to have school in the high school. So I think that's the policy. In
Yeah.
both schools, right.
Right.
Well, we were determining whether the co-op was going to be holding school that day.
Right.
Okay.
And the rec-
So we're interested in the answer to that question.
Right, well, we're about to take a vote on that. so-
Yep, okay.
Okay, so, great. I need a motion to, wait, hold on, it's in my outline, I like to just read Dawn's. I need a motion to close school on January 23rd, 2024 for the presidential primary election.
So moved.
Moved by Beth,
Second.
second by Krista. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? 4-0, motion carries.
Thank you.
School is closed, Drew.
I would add, I regret how late the state decided to have the primary. I mean, I've been pestering Andy about this for 9 months. It's like, I want to use the high school, but I can't tell you when.
I know, yeah.
So,
Yes, I'm aware.
maybe the next cycle we'll have some more notice, or maybe not.
Well, at least we know when the November election is, so there you go.
Yes, we
Great.
know that one's fixed. I should add, there is no provision for a snow day on the 23rd.
Right.
So the presidential primary will be held statewide.
Snow or no snow?
Snow or no snow.
Correct.
Okay,
Ice or wind or, you name it.
like the post. Okay. Thank you very much, Drew.
Thank you.
And I am now officially closing public input. Thank you.
Well,
There you go. Walk in, say your piece, and leave.
yeah, I like
I wish all town meetings worked
Can
that
I do
way.
that at just co-op meetings?
No. Sorry, it doesn't work that way for you.
Take care, Drew.
Thank you, Drew.
Thank you. It's snowing out, by the way.
I know, it's wonderful.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I don't want to drive.
I don't think it's gonna do much, but beautiful big flakes.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so, moving forward, we have a couple of policies to talk about. At this, do we need our principals for policy conversations? Are they, no? Okay.
You guys go out and shovel, clean off the cars?
Patrick's got to put his groceries away.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, so.
Happy holidays if we don't see you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays to you too. So, first one that we need to talk about is, wait,
Phoebe.
So by the way, I have two motions, to amend the school calendar to reflect.
I think the one we did is fine.
It's
Yes,
fine?
it's
Okay.
fine. Yep, yep,
One or the other.
yep.
Okay.
You too.
All right. So I need to make a motion to accept, I need a member to make a motion to accept the second reading, waive the third, and adopt policy EB, Workplace Safety Program and Joint Loss Management Committee.
So moved.
Moved by Beth,
Second?
second by Krista. And then we can, once it's on the floor, we can talk about it. So it's on the floor. So, Gina.
So you're seeing this policy for a second and adopt because there have been no changes and it's all required by law and no changes to our practice.
Great. Are there any questions or comments? Considering three of us sit on the policy committee. Okay, all those in favor? 4-0.
I was thinking about that
Motion carries. Okay.
We're going to be talking about policy. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't think I'm going to be.
I was thinking we could just group it. It's all you, Cindy, if you have any questions.
Okay, so now we have to, I need a motion to accept the second reading, waive the third, and adopt ACN nursing mother accommodations.
So moved.
Beth is
Second.
making the motion, Krista's seconding it. Gina?
Okay, so you see this policy, again, second and adopt because there have been no changes from the first round. There were some questions that were brought forward by members that were looked into in terms of the legality, and we are good the way it is in terms of privacy, and we are able to require the privacy given the conditions of the policy and the actions.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments on this one? All those in favor? 4-0.
Thank you.
That carries. Okay, so the next one is, I need a motion to accept the second reading of policy EHAB, Data Governance and Security.
So moved.
Moved by Beth,
Second.
second by Krista. It's on the floor. Are there any, I'm going to let Gina speak to it. Gina, you're doing them all tonight.
It's fun. So there were no changes.
Were there no changes?
But we didn't feel like we should adopt it yet.
It's a hefty policy that
Yeah,
that is an important one, so we just wanted to make sure that it was fully available for everyone to read.
okay. So,
Specifically Cindy.
Yeah, we were
you notice
concerned you didn't
anything about
finish
that, Cindy, that you wanted to bring up?
No, I did not.
Okay. So all those in favor of second read? 4-0, motion carries. And then we have the first reading of policy EBB, School Safety Program. I need a motion to accept the first reading
So moved.
by Beth. Second,
Second.
Krista. All right, so what is this one?
Okay, so
Can
this
you refresh my
policy,
memory?
yeah, absolutely. This policy is required by law. It's brand new, which is why you see nothing underlined, because the whole thing is coming forward for the first time. And essentially, it pulls the content of EB that we had removed in first read. So EB started as a school safety program. It evolved into the workplace safety program. And so this policy is providing that school safety program content with some additional pieces, such as the sports injury emergency action plan, with policy JLCJA that we did over a year ago, and some other components that we have in place, so.
Any questions on this one? Again, this is for first read.
Was this a template from the school board?
Yes, yeah.
Any questions, Cindy, other than that? Okay, all in favor of first read? 4-0, motion
you.
carries. And that concludes our policy work for the evening. So, I believe I need a report out from the Press Observer.
Well, clearly we are super fast, but a lot of that comes from the fact that we do leave 30 minutes for public input, and we generally don't need it, so someday we might, so that helps us, but we were still ahead, and I think we had great discussion. I liked the presentation. And even with the presentation, we are still at 7:17. So well
I
done.
thought we asked good questions.
We did.
Yes, we did. Okay, thank you very much, Positive Observer, good job. We don't have a non-public?
We do not?
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Beth.
Second.
Second by Krista. All those in favor? And I believe it is 7:00.